Hello, beloved Weirdflix viewers. I have some sad news. Chris no longer enjoys movies and will no longer be continuing on his path with Weirdflix. I will now be taking over the channel. I thank you for your support, especially during this dark and trying time. April Fools! Yeah, so in honor of International Women's Month, Chris has so graciously allowed me to host an episode of Weirdflix, even though it is now April. I'm pretty sure this is a way for him to pawn off more work onto me, but it is what it is. Today's flick that Chris has selected is 1313 Giant Killer Bees, because he thinks that the ladies will enjoy it. I'm pretty sure that this reasoning is why Chris is still single. And if I had to suffer through this movie, so do you. So buckle up, because this movie stings like no other.
Weirdflix.
For background, this is a David Dakota film. If that sounds relatively familiar, Chris goes into more detail about David and his filmography in our episode covering Ginger Dead Man 2, Passion of the Crust. I'll put this warning here now. There's a lot of shirtless men, and not in the fun Calvin Klein model way. Without further ado, this is 1313 Giant Killer Bees. Our movie begins with a really stressed out science guy named Venzin monologuing about some sort of biological disaster that is apparently causing the end of the world. And apparently, it's his fault.
If you're watching this tape, it means you've somehow managed to survive the single worst biological disaster this planet has ever seen. You want to know how it happened, why it happened, who caused it. I have the answers. I have the answers, because I caused it.
Way to go, buddy! Thus begins our flashback sequence because, of course, this whole movie is one long, sad flashback. Venzin tells us about his assistant, Redwood, who apparently went to a research facility on the San Marino island in the Caribbean. We then get, and I kid you not, 4 minutes of random shots of San Marino and Redwood looking moderately constipated. Finally, Redwood gets to the research facility, which is a vacation house? Look, I've never been to a research facility, but I don't think they're decorated like that. That weird chair car? Bedrooms? What?
If I may interject here, I believe I can enlighten our audience as to what this house is. I believe David Dakota either owns the house or rents it from somebody, because this house appears in a lot of his films. I know of at least 3 it appears in, not counting this one. That would be A Talking Cat, Santa's Summer Home, and My Stepbrother is a Vampire. It may appear in more, but those are the only ones I've seen it in.
Chris, how many of David's movies have you seen?
Too many, if I'm being honest.
Anyways, Redwood meets Connor, who is the guy leading the research team. They make small talk, which is by far the worst delivered small talk I've ever had the displeasure of listening to.
How was your trip?
It was very long.
Am I tired?
Yeah, but unfortunately, I don't have time to be tired. Venzin has about a week before we have to show some sort of results to the investors.
A week?
I have no idea where they got these actors, but I never want to hear or see them ever again. Connor shows Redwood around the research facility. It is definitely a research facility, not an Airbnb. Connor introduces Redwood to 2 grad student researchers playing soccer, Randy and Steve. More dry dialogue is delivered.
A great scientist.
Then they should be in lab.
Just got off a 14-hour shift.
Is it just me, or is Redwood giving off some real butthole vibes here? They then meet the beekeeper, a guy named Paul, who gives them the bad news that the male drones are dead. Redwood doesn't understand why this is a problem, which I find funny because he's supposed to be the second in command for this project. You'd think he'd know a little bit more about bees. Paul explains the situation.
The drones don't do anything except mate, therefore they're considered expendable. See, the hive's dying out. Same thing that's happening here, it's happening everywhere.
Well, that's what we're here to fix.
And Redwood is nonplussed. He says they'll fix the dying hive as if it's no big deal, when in actuality, it's a huge deal. We get some nature shots with a boring voiceover from Venzin about how the bees are dying. In conclusion, save the bees.
Now, look. I have nothing against saving the bees. I'm all for it, but you saw what happened when they saved the bees, right?
Yes, but this is a sci-fi movie. If the bees were to die in the real world, there would be drastic effects to ecosystems, and it would be detrimental to other life forms.
Yeah, well, I think keeping these bees around might be detrimental to other life forms.
I'm not gonna argue with this. Let's just get back to the movie. This voiceover also tells us that Venzin is developing a chemical formula that is supposed to help repopulate the bee population. I am sure this will in no way come back to sting him in the future. Anyways, back to Redwood and Connor. They make it back to the house where they meet Charlie, the maintenance man, who's shirtless. Remember when I said that there was a lot of shirtless men in this? Yeah, get ready, it's about to get worse. There's more bad dialogue, but this time with a side of contempt.
All of you are such geniuses. How come I'm the only one around here who can empty a garbage can? You guys can't do anything without my help.
Dude, you deserve all the credit.
I don't need to be patronized. You're the new guy, huh?
I guess I am. My name's...
Unimportant to me.
Ooh, Charlie, nice burn. Redwood and Connor then get into an argument about the research team because Redwood doesn't think they're working hard enough or something. I don't know. It's very unimportant. A girl, Anna, interrupts them, and Redwood goes all goo-goo eyes on her until he finds out she's dating Lewis, a guy who's obsessed with perfecting Bensington's formula. Redwood meets Lewis in the lab, which I'm pretty sure is actually a kitchen, but since we've already established that this was shot in some random rented Airbnb, let's just roll with it. They make some science talk, which is basically more angry dialogue about bees. Redwood makes some excuse about calling his mom, but instead calls Bensington. Bensington tells him to add some of the new additive that he gave him to the bees' food and to not tell anyone. Redwood goes to add the additive and tells Lewis that the reason why he has this huge needle out is for his insulin. Yes, it's such a good idea to shoot up insulin in a lab. I'm sure this is not violating multiple health codes. He adds the additive and Lewis is none the wiser. That is, until the bees end up dying.
No.
Redwood goes to call Bensington, but Lewis interrupts him and accuses him of messing with the formula. In good old guilty fashion, Redwood tries to shift the blame.
The last thing I would do is kill off the test subjects. Blame one of your non-existent coworkers. Blame the variables you introduced. But don't blame me.
Meanwhile, the bees aren't actually dead, but have somehow grown to an outrageous size. Didn't see that one coming. Randy and Steve finish up playing soccer, and Randy goes inside to shower. And this, dear viewers, is when this movie goes from bad sci-fi film to subtle homoerotic themes. And when I say subtle homoerotic themes, I mean the exact opposite. Nothing about this is subtle. We get 8 whole minutes of Steve rubbing his bare chest as the camera pans from his lips to the band of his boxers and back. And yes, this goes on for 8 minutes. When Steve is done with his pat down, he goes and stands by the window, only to get attacked by one of the giant bees. Lewis heads back to the lab where he finds that the dead bees are now missing. Randy hops into the shower and we get 4 minutes of him rubbing his naked body under the shower head. Steve comes in, but he's acting different. He's a little less talkative now, but I'm sure he's fine. Randy asks if he can get his back, which leads to another very awkward scene. Randy notes that Steve's hands are cold, and Steve responds by attacking him? Jeez, Steve, calm down, buddy. No need to bite. Redwood finally gets in contact with Bensington.
Everyone else will be calling you themselves. I can't believe I'm getting a hold of you by cell phone.
Why are you calling me?
Your additive? Well, it didn't work.
What?
It killed 4 test subjects. And we're damn lucky it killed them right away, too. Otherwise, they would have taken out the rest of the hive as well.
Wow. Who knew bee research was so dramatic? Lewis meets with Redwood right after he gets off the call with Bensington to tell him to come to the lab. Meanwhile, Paul is on the run from another killer bee when he runs into Randy and Steve outside. Poor Randy and Steve are now mostly naked zombies and attack Paul. I'm going to take this opportunity to explain a little bit more about the movie. You see, if you're stung by a bee, you get turned into a human zombie drone thing. And if you're bit by someone who was stung, you also turn into a human zombie drone thing. Do you see where this movie is going? Back at the lab, Lewis explains what's going on to Redwood.
Shortly after you and I left the lab today, I found this. The test subjects are gone.
Did one of the students come in here and what? Take the bees?
I have no idea.
Let's get the rest of the team in here and ask them if they know anything about it.
I'm asking you.
What did I do?
Things have been going badly ever since you got here. What's to prevent you from stealing the test subjects and bringing them back to America for yourself?
We're all on the same team, Lewis.
God, this movie is unbearable.
I gotta ask, how's it feel to be on the other side of the screen for once? Watching the movie, paying attention to it, writing the script for yourself, just being the star of the show?
This is the most soul-crushing experience I've ever had. Is it my poor audio quality? Maybe. Is it because of the movie you picked? More than likely. Would I be much happier reviewing anime? Absolutely.
Speaking of the movie, what did you think? It's a great pick for International Women's Month, isn't it?
No, absolutely not. Nothing about this movie celebrates women.
No, Alex, I told you, this movie is for the ladies. It says it right on the box. A science fiction chiller for girls. Who would want to celebrate women? Why would we be doing that?
That's the whole point of International Women's Month, to celebrate women and their accomplishments.
Well, geez, if you're all broken up about it, then you pick the movie for next International Women's Month.
Thank you, Chris. Very thoughtful of you. Now, on to more awkward shirtless men. Redwood storms off to go shower, and we get another 8-minute shower rub-down session. For those of you who have been keeping track of these clip times, that's now 20 minutes of my life that I'll never be able to get back. After a shower, Anna comes in to talk, and they talk about how the rest of the team doesn't trust him.
The others, they don't trust you.
I can see why. How do you feel about me?
I feel like you'd be an extremely nice change of pace.
They begin to make out, but what? Lewis, Anna's boyfriend, is here? But wait.
You guys got room for one more?
But it turns out that was just a dream, and he only slept with Anna. Hold on, stop the tape. You are telling me that Redwood flies all the way down to San Marino, tells this research team that they need to be working 24/7, then proceeds to do no work and get all lovey-dovey with this girl. Talk about hypocritical. Anna gets out of bed and hits the bathroom, where it's implied off camera that she gets attacked by another one of the bees. Meanwhile, Connor is trying to find Randy and Steve, when out of nowhere, Steve comes in and bites him. It's a blink and you miss it moment for sure. Redwood, now out of bed, runs into Charlie, who has found a carcass of one of the giant killer bees. Redwood shows it to Lewis, and they deduce that these bees are the reason why half of the research team is missing, or worse, dead. Redwood, instead of coming clean about the additive, once again starts blaming everyone else for the bee issue. Classic Redwood. He then goes and calls Benzington and yells some more. Benzington explains what was in the additive.
It was a substance recovered from a meteorite.
What?
And now I'm even more confused. Redwood and Lewis then split up to find the others, which I've found is never a good idea in these situations. My point is proven immediately because Redwood is attacked by one of the bees, but is able to kill it. Charlie, on his way out, is cornered by Randy and Steve and gets bit. After his close call with death, Redwood decides to go on a walk? I think this is supposed to be him trying to find the rest of the team, but it's actually just 9 minutes of him walking around local tourist locations. It's basically just a filler to make the movie longer. When he gets back from his walk, Redwood finds Anna and Paul waiting for him outside, and Redwood runs because, like, what's the alternative? Get bit and turn into a zombie? Meanwhile, Lewis finds Connor passed out inside, but Connor wakes up and bites him. Lewis freaks out and runs outside, where he runs into Randy, Paul, and Charlie, who then chase him back inside. Lewis and Redwood reconvene inside, and Lewis starts to die. Before he dies, however, Lewis gives Redwood some important information.
Their size isn't the only thing that mutates. Those are female workers. Without the queen's pheromones, they could potentially lay eggs. Those mutations are carrying fertilized eggs, and if one of them escapes...
Redwood makes the mistake of turning his back on Lewis and tries to call for help. Lewis, now a zombie drone, wakes up and bites Redwood. We then go back to Benzington, who apologizes for quite literally destroying the world. I mean, at this point, sorries ain't gonna do you any good. Ain't gonna do any of us any good. However, the bees find him and attack, and we can now put 1313 giant killer bees to rest. Thank God.
You know, it really felt great not having to do anything for this episode. I should try to pawn more work off on Alex. It's refreshing. As for my thoughts on the movie, well, it's not really fair to call this thing a movie. There's only the barest inklings of a plot, competent actors, and a script. It's just shirtless dudes. Seriously. I don't know how David Dakota keeps making movies or why, but I guess the fact that he still makes them proves that people are buying them, so good for him, I guess. I don't recommend this movie to anyone under any circumstances. There is no reason you should be watching it. In fact, I don't think anybody should ever watch a David Dakota film. Not that you'd know you were watching a David Dakota film based on how many aliases he has, but if you could ever figure it out, you should turn off the movie immediately. As for Alex, I think she's done a great job with this episode. I give her a lot of credit for taking on my role for just this episode, and although she didn't do as good of a job as I would have done, she makes a very passable co-host. Just nobody tell her I said that. She might start asking me to pay her.
I hated this movie. I hated everything about it. There was so much wrong with this, from the bad acting to the bad dialogue. It's marketed as a sci-fi movie for girls, which makes me believe that whoever wrote it has clearly never met a woman before in their life. Now, I have to talk about these spicy scenes that, to be completely honest, weren't very good. At this point, I've kind of established the fact that this movie, like all the other 1313 movies, basically is just sexualizing and fetishizing homosexuality. I am all for LGBTQ+ representation in the media, but this is not the representation that the LGBTQ+ community deserves. In a way, 1313 Giant Killer Bees almost dehumanizes homosexuality and turns it into a sexual fetish. And for that, I have to give this movie an F on our tier system. If you haven't watched the video where we go back and rate all of our movies on the scale, I highly suggest you do so. It's 35 minutes long, but it's a lot of fun, and I promise you'll love every second of it. Come back next year for International Women's Month, where I'll be reviewing my favorite feminist film, 10 Things I Hate About You. Thanks for watching, and remember, Weirdflix watches what no one else will.